it out.
Alrighty, everyone. It looks like we are live. Hopefully that is true, according to all these little buttons they are. Welcome to the Secrets of Saturn Livestream 6, Alchemical Tech Talk. And of course, what we're going to be talking about is, let's see if I can make it in the camera, this right here. The Alchemical Tech Revolution by Wayne McCroy.
Indeed.
So, this is Wayne's first book, and in fact, when Wayne and I started speaking again after not for, I don't know how many years, we got together and did a show on here, Secrets of Saturn, and that was his first live appearance ever, actually. And, well, the rest is history. Wayne is quite the public figure now, with 2 books out, and, well, he's doing quite well for himself, I must say. So anyway, Wayne, where shall we start with the book? I'm going to leave this right here for reference. By the way, hello to everyone out there in the chat room. Jeremiah Harris, thank you for the preemptive $5 super chat, which says, thank you for all your hard work, Jason. You've been an amazing example and taught me a lot. You are welcome, and we promise to keep on doing that. Thank you. That's really cool of you. And hello to the Fringe FM. We should be going live there for the next 2 hours, for the full 2-hour show. So hello to all of you. All right. Let's see. Let me get this book. Looks like people are still coming in. We've only got 22 people so far, which is low for us.
They'll start rolling in soon, I'm sure, because it's only 2 minutes after the hour. Greetings, everybody out there in YouTube land. Greetings out there on the Fringe FM. Good to be on once again. We're going to be talking tonight about some alchemical technology. This is a premise that I wrote about in this book. That a lot of our science is actually based on old alchemical sciences and what they would term as kind of metaphysics and things of that nature. And you see that borne out in a lot of different things in our modern fields of science. And one of the biggest fields that really plays out this whole idea of these meta-sciences is quantum physics. When you look at quantum physics, a lot of the principles involved with quantum physics point right directly back to a lot of these alchemical principles of sorts. A lot of things like the Hermetic principles of thought, such as the principle of vibration. That's a good one, where many of our sciences equate back to that. And this is kind of the premise of the book, how a lot of this stuff is derived from ancient knowledge that man had. And we're just kind of using it and renaming it now with our modern technology and putting our more modern spin on things, to put it that way. They just change around the terminology, and essentially what they do is they misdescribe how it really works. So when you see anything with the moniker quantum in front of it, understand what you're looking at, okay? It's a misdescription of what you would term a metaphysical science. So when they're looking at this quantum physics or quantum mechanics, this is what they're doing. They're taking this old principle, putting a new name and a new spin on it. And what a lot of this has to do with, that people may not be familiar with, is it all stems back to a philosophy known as atomism. Okay, so this is like the principle that all things are made up of fundamental particles, which doesn't always pan out in scientific experimentation. But this is why they came up with the idea of quantum physics and quantum mechanics. This is to kind of correlate all of these different sciences to this whole atomism principle. So this is where they came up with the term quantum, and this is why they try to find a particle for everything. This all turns back to an ancient philosophy known as atomism. So that's where a lot of this comes from. So when you see quantum, understand that what they're showing you is a real physical effect, but the science that they're telling you that it uses to get there is being misdescribed to you. And I found this with so much of different science. I mean, Jason will attest to this with like the space fraud and everything like that. Excuse me. Just can't seem to get rid of this nagging cough. Anyway, so yeah, that's what a lot of this is foundationally about. A lot of different principles of our modern science and our modern technologies are based on these old Hermetic ideas. So, like I said, one that really stands out a lot is the principle of vibration, where everything is in a constant state of motion. for the most part. Or change, motion or change. That's how they describe it. So you could see uh, how this ties into alchemy as well. You're changing the state of something in an alchemical fashion. But like I had pointed out, much of our modern science is misdescribed to us. I think the ancients had better ways of describing these things, but they did it in more of an allegorical sense rather than like an actual physical textbook sense, like our science tries to do. But when you look at things from the principle standpoint, a lot of times allegory and things like that better describe something than just your straight up standard definition, because not everything falls under the standard definition category. So things a lot of times will take on a concept uh, better, and you can describe this concept better as like an archetype. That's another good word I like to use to try to describe these things. It's an archetype. It's a concept rather than like a one, two, three uh, thing like they try to describe it in science. Now, cause and effect, that's another principle that's bantied about with this, and that's a real thing. I mean, that's obvious on the face of it. Cause and effect is a thing, but a lot of times, the way some of these technologies and sciences work, it distorts how the cause and effect relationship is in these things. So, a lot of this stuff is kind of hard to get to the core of how it really works, especially when you're talking about something such as like quantum physics, as I keep alluding to, because this is something that is just there to kind of mystify the average mind so that you think I'm just not smart enough to understand what's going on with that. That's not the case. I mean, it's deliberately misconstrued so that you have no hope of understanding what's going on. It's the old magician's trick. It's, look over here at this when something else is totally going on. So when they're telling you this is the particle zoo, these are gluons, and this is that, and interferons or whatever the hell they're calling them now, all these different particles. Rest assured, that's not really what's going on, especially when you're talking about places like CERN using these colliders and particle colliders and things like that to study these things. And they're seeing these results pop up on the screen with their computer equipment, and who could make heads or tails of that? This is all a construct, a mathematician's construct. You could use math to basically describe anything you want. It doesn't change the interpretation, though. Like that's the thing. You could use the math; will be the same, but you just use a different interpretation for what the math really means, and that's what they do by and large with this, because all they're looking at is a bunch of numbers on the screen when it comes down to it. So they don't really know what in the world's going on in that accelerator when they're doing that. They're just looking at the numbers that pop up on the computer screen and putting their own interpretation on it based upon these nebulous things that they've been taught about this stuff. So who knows what is really going on within those types of technologies. It's just a matter of you're taking this number and you're saying this is what this means. This means that we found this particle and such, and that may not be the case. So that's basically a lot of what this is all based on. And I wrote this book, and it branches out in a lot of different directions. It talks about a lot of different things. But basically, the premise behind it is, first of all, our science is totally skewed and misdescribed to us. Second of all, basically, I put this book out as a warning against the transhumanist agenda, because that's rolling at us like a freight train right now.
That's for sure.
And it's coming down the tracks. Yeah, it's coming down the tracks, and I think a lot of people are going to be totally unprepared for what direction this stuff goes. You have anything to add there, Jason?
Oh, yeah, the transhumanism thing, man, that's a biggie, isn't it? And I've been saying for quite some time, watch out what's going on, folks, because they're really pushing this stuff. As a matter of fact, I just found a document that I sent to Crow and to Wayne last night where it talks about how they're going to use images and archetypes and things like that in our society to manipulate things to where they want it to be, like what they want as a society. They're talking about Western society, but they do actually mention some things in other parts of the world as well. But the big thing is, it's called Images of Man, and it's by the Stanford Research Institute. It was released in 1974. This is something that Crow, Wayne, and myself are all going to be digging into more. But if you want to find it, that's the name of it. There was a copy out there, so it shouldn't be hard for you to find. But they talk about how technology is ever increasing and how that's going to be important on what shape society is going to be in the years to come. And that's what the whole thing's about. And I haven't finished reading it yet, so that's why we haven't done a show on it yet. But I think I accidentally, while looking for something else, hit a gold mine here, as Wayne said to me earlier, on how they're going to do things to manipulate us in the years to come. And as everyone knows, we've done multiple episodes on Crow 777 Radio about the changing of the decades and how obvious it is that those things are guided in some way, shape, or form. That the 60s are over, the switch is thrown, boom, it's 1970, everything's going to change. That's the one I always point out a lot. But the same thing happened from the 70s to the 80s, and I'm old enough to have lived through that, and so is Wayne. And it's a stark, stark difference when you see things change like that. So anyway, the transhumanism thing is coming. We already could possibly be said to be transhumanists. Sometimes we are called that just because of, let me see, do I have mine here? Because of this little gadget right here. Because most people can't live without those. We're already attached to technology.
They are a handy tool, and a lot of the transhumanist proponents will argue that we're already cyborgs because of what you said. I mean, we have these cell phones. We're addicted to them. They say the only thing is the connection speed. That's the only thing really deterring us with that from being what they would call like full cyborg per se.
Right.
So, at some point they're going to hook it directly to your brain. And when they do so, then the input-output speed will be to where it needs to be, where you could be considered a true cyborg then. So that's what they're looking for. That's why they keep coming up with all these new wireless networks and stuff that are supposed to have these great connection speeds. That's what 5G is all about to one degree or another. I think the 6G network coming after the 5G will be another big upgrade.
Is that
to this
8K
whole
streaming
idea.
of the new crappy Star Wars movie?
It could be. I don't know. I mean, you could stream it directly into your brain, so you could get all your social justice warriorism all at once, just directly geared into your brain.
Woke. So Joseph D. Roop is asking what our opinions are on neural implants for people that might need it for things like seizures and things like that. Well, of course, this is how they always introduce these technologies. Well, maybe not always, but they do it a lot. It's for the better good. It's for the better good. It's medical technology, things like that. And you know what? That is a good thing. I don't have a problem with that. People who are missing limbs, people who are paralyzed, whatever it happens to be, those are good things. And I don't have a problem with that. It's like, what are others going to do with it, though, is the question. And we, of course, always use the example of Mr. Elon Musk and Neuralink and all that, and they are coming a long way in a very short amount of time. Wayne, what do you want to say about old Muskie boy, or Uncle Elon, as I like to call him?
Yeah, he's he's something else, that guy. But the point is, yes, it's technology. It could be used for good or it could be used for bad. My concern is there's an extreme potential for misuse out there, and the people that are controlling it right now and pulling the strings on all of it have been known to misuse different technologies and different things for their own advantages and for their own personal gains, and not necessarily to benefit the public. And that's how they always roll these things out. It's going to be good for you. I could use, just as a similar example here, okay? Where I live here in Pennsylvania, a few years back, they decided they want to put casinos in, right? So what they did is they came to all the property owners and they said, okay, we're going to put these casinos in. This will relieve your property taxes. This is what this will do. This will eliminate your property taxes so that you don't have to pay so much property tax. So then, of course, everybody voted, yeah, well, let's put the casinos in. So they put the casinos in, and lo and behold, guess what? My property taxes still went up. So, it's one of those things. They just tell you what you want to hear to get it in place. And then once it's in place, then it's like, sorry, guys, it's not what we originally said. But, now we have what we want. And you're at our beck and call on it. So that's how it's going to be. I mean, these transhumanist technologies, they're not meant for you and I. That's what people need to understand. They're not meant for the public. This is meant for the elites, the 1%ers of the world. These are going to be the ones that are going to be the beneficiaries of the good parts of these technologies. You and I are not going to be the beneficiaries. They'll roll it out that way, sure. And it would be a great thing. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot of potential good use for this stuff. You could cure a lot of diseases and fix a lot of physical problems and stuff with something like a brain implant that could maybe say help somebody to walk again who's been paralyzed. That's all good. I mean, there's good uses for it, but my concern is there's the potential, the huge potential for misuse, and that's the danger that's involved with it. So I think we need to really speak up and keep a close eye on these things, because when you look at it, who's the ones that are watching this stuff, keeping an eye on it? There's no real regulatory agencies for this stuff per se. So that's the thing. I mean, when you have places like DARPA and the Department of Defense and stuff, when they have their hands in these technologies, and believe me, they're heavily involved with these technologies. They're the ones that pull the strings on a lot of this stuff. They don't have any regulatory oversight with that stuff. That's the whole thing. So, they look at different militarized uses of it first before any of this stuff even gets trickled down into the public. So when you see the things coming out in public now that are coming out, you could view that stuff as being at least 30 years old, bare minimum. The military industrial complex had this stuff 30 years ago. So when you look at it like that and you see this stuff coming out for public consumption now, you could know that the military has figured out every plausible use for this 30 years ago. So, we just get the crumbs. That's the thing. This stuff goes on in these black projects communities and these classified projects, special access programs. That's what it's called. That's the official name for a lot of this stuff. And a lot of these are run through private corporations that are military subcontractors. So that way, the information is not subject to FOIA request. And that's something people need to realize too. That's a big thing. That's why a lot of these military grade technologies and stuff are run through these private contractors, these military subcontractors, because that way they're private corporations and this stuff is considered proprietary. So it's not subject to FOIA requests. So you can't just write a letter to this said agency. You can't write a letter to DARPA with a Freedom of Information Act request looking for this information on this stuff.
Right.
They don't have it. The private corporation has it, and it's proprietary information. So they're not legally bound to let you see any of that. And so that's how they keep a lot of these technologies secret when it comes down to it. So when you see the stuff that's coming out now that we consider cutting edge here in the public sector, imagine what they're working on in the military private sector in these secret access programs. Imagine that stuff.
So why don't we start at the beginning here, Wayne? The title of your book is The Alchemical Tech Revolution, but the full title is Fulfilling Ancient Esoteric Agendas Through the Use of High Technology. So when you were starting to dig through this information, what ancient esoteric agendas would you say you were trying to explore?
Well, one thing that always seems to come about, there's two primary terms that crop up a lot when you're looking at this stuff, and you go back to looking at these ancient mystery schools and what they were hoping to accomplish. So these two terms that I'm talking about are, first of all, there's one that they call the Great Work, and another one is known as the Philosopher's Stone. And both of these things could be equated to a couple different things, really, when you look at them. The primary one being immortality, and they're very close to achieving that with our technology through this transhumanist movement. That's at least that's their viewpoint. They think they're going to be able to live forever and become the gods of this place, pretty much. It also has to do with enlightenment or illumination or apotheosis. Those are some other terms that they use for the Great Work or the Philosopher's Stone, the fulfillment of these things. So they want to become the gods of this place and live forever. And that's basically that's the ancient esoteric agenda that they're looking to fulfill with the use of these different high technologies. And they see that as being closer than ever before in this day and age. It's within their reach right now. They've been planning for it for ages untold, and now they can see this stuff coming to fruition with their technological advances that they're looking at right now. They really, truly, and honestly believe that they could transfer their consciousness into a machine and live forever. So That's pretty disturbing stuff. And they plan on doing so via the first step through these BCI machines, these brain computer interfaces,
Yeah.
such as Neuralink that we discussed. Neuralink this year is rolling out human trial tests on their neural lace product. So be interesting to see what they come up with that.
Right. And I see people talking about the mud flood, and we have figured out, at least we think we have, where they're drawing from, because the sillier aspects of that is probably a distracting psyop.
Right.
Yeah, there was no
Yeah,
worldwide mud flood. There wasn't. I hate to say it to you guys, but you're just buying into nonsense. It's not what you think it is. Again, just like with all these things that we uncover, it's being drawn from myth, and we're going to do a show on that coming up very soon, within the next few weeks. We're a little ahead on Crow 777, but yeah, we're going to discuss about that. So
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I've looked at it ad nauseum because it does have some truths like riddled in there about things.
right, but
So
it's not.
it's
It's
one
not
of
what
those
people think
things
it
where
is.
it's really not what people think it is, and that's the thing. I see a lot of people. They love to talk about this. They think that this is just the end all be all of explaining a lot of the things that are misdescribed in our history and our science. But we're going to be recording that show very soon, Jason, and
Yeah.
I think people are going to be shocked at some of what's being told to them about it. So we'll see. I mean, it's an interesting topic, and the people have wanted us to tackle it for a long time. So we put our brains together and discovered a couple things about it that I don't think anybody's gone at with it.
No.
So it should be a good show when we do record.
No, but between you, Crow, and myself, this is what we do. We're usually at the tip of the spear with these things, as Mr. Alex Jones would say. Except we're doing it for real, not making up nonsense and taking our shirt off and screaming at the camera. But anyway,
Bye, boner pills.
no one wants to see that. So let's go back to the book here, Wayne. Let's start with Chapter 1. What is alchemy, and why is it relevant today? Well, alchemy, of course, is something that we talk about a lot. And, of course, it's not what a lot of people think it means.
No, a lot of people think of alchemy as pseudoscience. I don't see it that way. Alchemy is actually natural science. I mean, that's another term you could use for it. Natural science. We kind of lump together a lot of things into alchemy, but alchemy is essentially it's natural science. It's how things work with nature, and it's a different understanding of how these things operate, how these different principles in nature operate. Uh, the thing we're fed with our modern science is, like I said, most of it's misdescribed to us. Whereas when you take a look back at the natural sciences or the alchemical sciences, these give you kind of a much clearer and better picture of what's going on and how things operate. A lot of it's tied up in allegorical type descriptions.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But once you could understand the allegory being presented to you, you get a much clearer picture of how things work. So it's one of those things where I think our modern science has tried to oversimplify things and make it down into, this 3-step process, 1, 2, 3, and like that turn it into something linear when it's not always something linear like that on how things operate. But when you look at the way nature works and how the natural sciences work, you do get a better feel for how things are really going on. So that's what a lot of this stems from, and that's basically what we call alchemy. And a lot of different things will get lumped in to alchemy. A lot of people in the mainstream would say alchemy is the precursor to chemistry, and that's kind of true to a certain degree. Chemistry is kind of like incomplete alchemy, if you want my take on it. I think that's a good way to describe it. Our modern chemistry is an incomplete form of alchemy. So could some good and stuff be derived from it? Yes, good can be derived from our modern chemistry, but it's missing certain elements, and a lot of those are spiritual type elements that go along with it. And that's a lot of what the push is with our modern science. It's to eliminate the spiritual component of things, and it's kind of a hyper-materialist view. So that's where our modern science leads, is to this hyper materialist view
Yeah.
and this hyper materialist world. Whereas the alchemical sciences and natural sciences take consideration of things that are spiritual and things that are, otherworldly. Whereas we're just kind of bound in the physical here with our modern science. It doesn't look at different aspects of things like spiritual aspects, like alchemy would.
Well, let's take a moment to even talk about materialism. Lovely folks like Edward Bernays convinced people in Western societies that materialism was the way. Why? You don't just want a product, you need a product. And tying it to an emotional key within you to make you desire a thing, like feeling masculine with that new great big sexy car or anything like that. And they figured this out, and then they sold it to us, and here we are 100 years later, and man, just everybody's going to wait in line for that new iPhone, even though there's nothing wrong with the one in their pocket. They've got us, man. They've really got us.
They really do. And, just to kind of put a fine point on what you're saying, all you have to do is look back at the history of how women started smoking cigarettes. That's got Bernays written all over it. He's the individual responsible for that, for making women desire smoking cigarettes. Because up until he had actually done the marketing on that, there was a very small percentage of women who were smokers. It was all mostly men,
Right.
and mostly military men who smoked at that point. But once Bernays got a hold of the marketing campaigns for the cigarette companies, that's when everything kicked into high gear. So this guy was responsible for a lot in our world. This is the guy that made bacon a thing.
Yep, bacon and eggs. Bacon and eggs.
Bacon and eggs
Yep.
for breakfast. This is the thing. This guy made breakfast in America, which, by the way, is
before that people would eat just small.
A 9/11 include on it, but
oh wow, yeah.
Sorry,
that's not a thing.
I tangent like that. That's okay. I think people like that though, because my mind wanders and sometimes it doesn't come back. But that's one of those things. But yeah, Breakfast in America, that was a Supertramp album, and it had a 9/11 in it.
That's very true.
Yeah, but that's not neither here nor there. But Ed Bernays had his fingerprints all over that. So
I just got some more Edward Bernays books, in fact, because we're going to do another episode on Crow 777 Radio about Edward Bernays, because man, he was so instrumental in shaping the way things are now. And even though we did an episode and did a lot of the key stuff, I'm trying to get really in depth with just how he was thinking, what influences he had. Good grief, I cannot believe how much stuff that guy was doing, even in his 20s, like World War I era. This guy was in his early and mid 20s and doing massively worldwide influential things. So we're going to go into all of that as a follow-up to our last episode, which was ages ago. And, we've talked about this. I think we may revisit multiple topics we did ages ago, just because we're always getting new listeners, and not everyone's going to go back through nearly 200 episodes either. So revisiting topics with new information is probably a good idea, although we try really hard not to repeat ourselves. So we'll see. But the Edward Bernays thing, there's a lot of information there that we didn't cover the first time, and we most assuredly will be very soon.
It's very difficult sometimes to not repeat yourself, especially when you do find something that is so kind of world-shaking or shocking that it really bears repeating. So, it's one of those things where Bernays, he had his fingerprints all over everything, and there's just so many aspects. You could probably do 10 shows about the guy and still not cover it all. So when you look at it from there, there's a lot more to be discussed about it. But this guy was the father of modern marketing, and marketing is just a propaganda tool when it comes down to it. It's a sub-science of propaganda. So when you understand marketing is a sub-science of propaganda, I think that should tell you some things about the products that we buy. So products, that's another thing to look at. When it comes to it, we are considered to be products ourselves.
Oh yeah.
Especially when you get something for free. Vaccines. There's a product. So I'm sorry, I can't shake this cough, Jason.
Oh,
you just have to.
Poor thing. Would you like a lozenge?
Oh, I would love a lozenge. I think Bernays did some marketing on lozenges too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Ricola. But I don't know.
I just missed it in the chat here. Oh, Seeking Truth said anything that is older than 100 years could be complete poppycock. I go a little bit further than that. That's actually an important point we should address for a moment. Yes, I think once you get past a certain point, you should really start questioning a lot. I usually start thinking anything before 1800s-ish, just because there's tons of documentation and people were writing things into the 20th century about the 19th century that I think if anything crazy was going on or anything completely different, it probably would have shown up. You know, you did have, I mean, even somebody like Wyatt Earp survived all the way up into the, I forget, 30s, 40s, something like that, and actually gave John Ford advice on how the actual OK Corral shootout happened, which didn't actually happen at the OK Corral. It happened one or two lots over. It's just that was the one that had a name and was popular. He's the one that told him they waited for the train to go by so that they had the distraction of the noise and all the dust being kicked up before the firing started. So just things like that. Things that happened in the 1800s got discussed in the 20th century. So I'm okay with things in the 1800s for the most part, which is also why I have a problem with the mud flood taking place. Like this, and let me be very specific about this. Folks talk about a mud flood that happened around the time of the Civil War that buried the Tartarian Empire, and then the rest of societies that existed at the time, the Americans and the English and all that, started destroying their buildings. I don't buy into that. I just don't. That's silly. There were so many newspapers. There were so many people writing books. There was tons of independent press at the time. It was before the Rockefellers and all of them really got a hold of everything. Well, they weren't even really around yet in the 1800s. So people were able to print independent newspapers and things like that and hand them out. So if there was some kind of massive worldwide calamity going on, I would bet a wooden nickel that somebody somewhere would have written about the damn thing. You know, this is why, I mean, this is how we always do things. Just look at the matter as objectively as possible. When something really insane comes up, think about it. Okay, how can I blow holes in this? Is there truly a there, as Crow would say? And with the mud flood, in that context, happening around the Civil War, no, there's not a there. And Wayne, you had said something to me the other day about the children on the trains and all that. Why don't you go through on that one?
Well, basically, I looked into that to see if there was anything to that, because another part of the narrative that goes along with this, with the whole mud flood thing, is that there were these orphan trains, and there was this large population of children that supposedly had to repopulate the United States after these mud floods. And when I actually looked into it, basically it was more of a social welfare program type thing. And the numbers are actually not great enough to really constitute what you would consider, like a repopulation of the entire country by these children, these orphaned children, which all of them weren't technically orphans when it comes down to it. But you're looking at the numbers when you look at this, when you look it up. They claim that there were 200,000 children that were in this orphan train program over the course of a 75-year period. So when you actually break that down and look at the numbers, it's an extremely low number every year, considering this was across the entire United States and Canada that this program took place. So you're looking at less than 3,000 children per year. And as a foster parent, I can tell you, just in the county I live alone right now, there's over 800 children in the foster care system here. So this orphan train thing was kind of a precursor of the modern foster care system. So when you're looking at 3,000 children per year over the entire continental U.S. and Canada, that's not an awful lot of people to be in that type of a program, compared to like more modern numbers of that. So when you're looking at it from an objective point of view like that, and you could see, I mean, the history of it is easily findable. You could read about what it was about. Basically, what had happened is a lot of overpopulation in the urban areas like New York and stuff was going on, and people were abandoning their children and leaving them in the streets, and they actually formed children's street gangs and stuff like that. So
documented,
a lot of people
documented and talked about. Not a mud flood.
So,
but
no, it didn't have anything to do with a mud flood. One has nothing to do with the other.
Right. What I'm saying is people documented this. Independent newspapers wrote about these things. People put it in novels. The documentation from a time period when people would do such things. No worldwide mud flood.
Right, absolutely. This had nothing to do with a mud flood whatsoever at all. But somebody decided to snag onto that narrative and connect it to the mud flood. And we'll go over the reasons for that when we do the Crow 777 episode on the mud flood.
Right.
So, and once again, these things don't happen by accident. And the whole mud flood narrative was kind of directed at what you would call us truthers or conspiracy theorists or whatever people want to,
Well,
whatever moniker people want to give to us.
look at how many
This
people are
was
caught up in
something
it
that was
now.
targeted at us.
Yeah,
Right.
people
So
are
this
obsessed with
is
this
a
thing.
narrative that was
There
targeted
isn't a
at us.
day, Wayne, that I go by where people aren't bombarding me with, when are you going to talk about the mud flood? It's like, dude, how are you buying this? Like, of all the things we talk about, we back up and we back up and we back up with evidence. That's not saying we're 100% correct about everything, but we try our damnedest. Man, there is no evidence for this mud flood thing. Not the minor circumstantial things. But anyway, I don't want to keep going off about that. We're here to talk about your work. Before I forget, though, I did want to mention that Rose has been uploading Crow's telescope work so that it's preserved on a BitChute channel. So it is the Crow, CRROW 777 BitChute channel. And it's actually on a roll, thank goodness. So if you're up for helping us out there, please subscribe and share with those who may not be familiar with Crow's classic telescope work. We have clips up with the boomerang, the vortex, the shooting orb, the exploding chem bomb, the turbo thruster clip, and more coming. Crow's got quite a bit. And this way, if YouTube does anything nasty, at least it's up there for people to do their own make their own thoughts about it in the years to come, because I don't think BitChute will start hacking things away. So let's move on, Wayne, unless you have something else to comment on that.
I think, we could talk about that more when we record the episode with Crow. So, we could let the mud flood thing lie for now.
BitChute does not charge, by the way. It's free. So what do you feel is the ultimate goal of the elite with their use of alchemy?
Well, essentially, they want to achieve this whole great work or philosopher's stone idea. They want to become the gods of this place and become immortal. They want to live forever, and they want to have unlimited power over their environment around them and all the people around them. So they want control, total control of everything, and that's kind of what it's about. So that's what they're looking at, and they could see this coming to fruition by using these advanced technologies and merging themselves with machines so that they could live forever. But what kind of a life would it be with your consciousness in a machine? That's, what I ask, if that could even be done as a thing, which, I kind of take a little issue with. I don't think there's any type of technology that would transfer your spirit per se into a machine, which I think they are also heavily aware of, and that's why the push for the transhumanist idea, because that way, you're using your physical bodily human form in conjunction with these technologies and merging with them, because I think they're ultimately really aware that just what they're trying to do to transfer people's consciousnesses into these machines is not going to play out all that well without the biological component to it, or the human component, or the we would call the divine spark within man. So a machine doesn't have this divine spark, right, nor can it ever have this divine spark. So that's why the big push for the merging of man with the machine. So that's why they want to tie us to the machine, so that they can maintain their divine spark and still achieve the immortality in the machine, and still have the freedom of moving around from body to body within the machine. So that's one of the things they're looking for. It'll be like a multi dimensional and a multi-location type of existence. You could be multi-bodied doing this. You could have multiple bodies with this whole transhumanist idea. That's the thing. I mean, if they're able to transfer their consciousness into a machine, then potentially they could be multiple places at once. Their consciousness could reside in multiple places at once. It's really interesting to think about. And a lot of these things, excuse me, have been discussed in scientific papers. It's not all the stuff of science fiction. One that I can think of off the top of my head is talking about. I don't remember the name of the paper. I could look it up if anybody's interested, though. But it talks about how one potential use for these BCI technologies, these brain-computer interfaces, is so that one person could experience the actual experiences and emotions and everything of another person. So they could actually experience somebody else's life experience of some sort and empathize with them more that way. So you're looking at this this idea. It's something that's going to really encroach upon our privacy and all kinds of other aspects of our lives. And this is a term that's called cognitive liberty. And that's going to be something that's going to be discussed heavily in the next few years because they have policy papers about the ethical concerns of these technologies and stuff too. So this is something that they're heavily looking at, is the effects it's going to have on what they call cognitive liberty. So that's something that we need to take into consideration when we're looking at this stuff, because essentially they're building a type of device that could allow them to actually read your mind and know what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And that could be a dangerous thing if it's connected to the internet, especially, you're talking a collective. It's the Borg, basically, when it comes down to it. Yeah. You're talking about the collective. That's what it's going to be all about at some point or another, the collective. And you can see how this will raise a lot of ethical concerns, especially among people who, really are concerned about ethics. A lot of these transhumanist types aren't really all that concerned about ethics. They just want what they want. Power, and knowledge, and immortality. They want it. And they'll do just about anything to get it. I mean, you look at guys like that Richard Dawkins. He's a perfect example of this. Like, he's, just totally arrogant and wants what he wants, and just
and have no problem telling you that either.
Yeah, that's the thing. And these are the personality types that are really kind of pushing this whole transhuman agenda. So could some good and stuff come from this? Absolutely, it can. But my major concern is that people pulling the strings behind it right now, they don't have those altruistic goals in mind with it. And that's a lot of the problem. So I think there needs to be more oversight of this stuff. When you have somebody like Elon Musk just running around building these neural lace devices and stuff, the guy has shown he has very little moral compass, honestly, because he's willing to come out and lie to the public about, like, say, putting a car in space, So that should tell you something about the guy's integrity right there. Because if anybody believes that there's really that car out in space, I think you're delusional. So that's beside the point. But just to put a fine point on it, if you got a figurehead like Elon Musk out pushing this stuff heavily and, supposedly masterminding a lot of this stuff and coming out and setting the narrative. See, he's a narrative setter. He's coming out and saying, here's what we want to do. We're going to merge with the machines so that the artificial intelligence doesn't kill us. Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense, Elon. So what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to go start an artificial intelligence company now. So, it makes total sense. But then, he'll say, but we need to merge with it in order so that it doesn't kill us.
While looking all serious on Joe Rogan.
Right. I'm smoking pot on Joe Rogan. And, it boggles the mind that anybody really thinks that this guy is really the genius that they claim he is. He might be smart. I'll give him that. But, when it comes down to it, he's a figurehead, okay? He's the scapegoat that they put in front of you to be the big target. It's kind of the same thing like the presidency of the United States. The guy they put up in the presidency of the United States, this is your scapegoat, okay? This is the guy they want you to blame for everything going on. And right now, they got a guy in there who's willing to play the part to a T, and he's doing it well. And the guy prior to him did it well, too. Obama was a really great scapegoat when it comes down to it. They just have to be the willing participant in this, and Trump is that to a T as well. Like he's the willing scapegoat. He's up there to take your derision and be the one blamed for everything.
It's going
And
to be
he
huge.
actually, it's gonna be huge. We have the best scapegoats everywhere. So, but that's basically what you're looking at with an Elon Musk type figure. This is the guy that's the figurehead. Okay, this is the one that they put in front of you, the puppet they put in front of you, that they'll have dance and sing, and that you'll give them the credit and the glory, or you'll give them the blame when something goes wrong. And that's what that job is about. It's the scapegoat job. So they put this guy up to present the ideas to you because you look at him, he's kind of charismatic to a certain degree, he's kind of quirky, and people don't feel threatened by him. So that's why they put him out there to push these messages and say things like, yeah, we need to merge with the machine so that the artificial intelligence doesn't kill us. Okay, well, yeah, that's the narrative they want you to buy into. They want you to think that there's no alternative to this, that we need to do this if we're going to survive, and that we won't survive otherwise. So that's what they do. They put a guy like this out there in the limelight, and he's a very popular figure. They put him out there, they push him everywhere, and he goes around saying all this stuff, and people eat it up. And then they believe that he does stuff like launch a car into space. So, it's this guy has his hands all over everything. Do you believe in any realistic way at all that somebody would be so intertied with all these different aspects of the tech scene? Like, he builds electric cars, okay? He has SpaceX. He does space vehicles. He builds space vehicles. He's also designing brain-computer interfaces, neural lace devices with people. He sells flamethrowers.
Spaceballs the flamethrower. The kids love this one.
Spaceballs the flamethrower. Yeah. So SpaceX the flamethrower. That's coming soon, I'm sure. But it just boggles the mind to think that people will buy that this guy's fingerprint is on all this stuff, and he's developing that underground tunnel system or something. Supposedly they've been working on that. They're trying to credit him for that too. It's nonsense, guys. It's nonsense. This guy's a figurehead. He's a public figure that they put out there to be the face of this stuff. And behind the scenes, I guarantee you, it's not Elon Musk calling the shots on this. Guaranteed. So, where do you want to go from there with the talk here, Jason?
Well, I'm going to take a moment to thank Frank Vitucci for the $3.99 super chat. Thanks so much, Frank. He wants to know if there's any new work from Crow. Crow is intending to start doing telescope work again in this coming spring, summer. He's still recovering from his second surgery that really made it difficult for him to carry a giant telescope. His house is in the north, and there's lots of steps. I've been there, so yeah, it's a bit of an issue for the whole structure where he's got the scope stored to get it down and out and set up. It's a big deal for one guy and his tiny little wife to help him. So he's gonna do it. He just needs to be fully recovered, or bad things could happen to parts downstairs. Let's just say. So yeah, he'll have more telescope work coming. I saw some folks talking about the P1000, P900, and all those. I have a P1000, and man, I'm pretty impressed with that, to be honest with you. It really is kind of like a little miniature telescope. The big thing is that it doesn't track. So you can't just point it at the moon and then sit back and so go, oh, wow, nifty neato, that's awesome, because very quickly the moon's going to get out of the viewfinder. You have to track it. So if you want to do anything kind of like what Crow did, you have to... It's easiest if you have it on a good solid tripod with a very fat moving head, so that you can pan with it. That's what I have mine on, and the handle of the head, I have it locked down most of the way, so that it's a very tight pan. So as I'm moving it, I have to put a little effort into it, and then I'm kind of doing this sort of a thing as whatever object I'm looking at is moving. I've also, for you people who are into flat Earth out there, been trying to get some good shots of New Orleans from my side of Lake Pontchartrain, which is the Covington, Mandeville side. There's a pier, a fishing pier, that I can go to where I'm like looking dead at the other side. But I even tried again today. I've tried multiple times, but the conditions have to be right to see anything, which kind of sucks. I tried today. My side of the lake was crystal clear blue skies, like beautiful day. It was not warm, but nice. And I went down there and it was really cold, massive winds, and I couldn't see hardly anything. So I guess the distance from my side to the New Orleans side is enough for the weather to be shifted. Maybe it's because of the water. I don't really know. But anyway, I couldn't get any shots despite my efforts. But it warms up very quickly here. So once what little bit of winter we have shakes off, I'll be able to do a lot more work and hopefully understand how to use the P1000 a lot more, because that thing is super powerful and I can't recommend them enough. But you don't even need those. P900 is really good. That's got an 83 times zoom. And Dave Marsh actually recommends not the P900, but a different camera, the Nikon B700, which is a super zoom that has a 60 super zoom. It's a slightly older model, but you can get them dirt cheap, like $200. That's it, with it, and still got a super zoom, just not as powerful as the newer ones. But hey, man, you want to get into it? That's still a lot. You can get right in on the moon with a 60 optical zoom. And this is the important part. It's an optical zoom. It's like using a telescope. Digital zoom is useless crap because it's just taking what's there and blowing it up for you to see. That's garbage. You don't want that. You want an optical zoom, meaning the glass is actually focusing the light more. So anyway, this is the fun part about live streams. You can kind of go in multiple directions. But let's get back to your book, I think. So what technologies are being used for the alchemical agenda is the next chapter, but we kind of went through that, I would say, right?
Yeah, I think we touched on it, quite a bit already with a lot of this stuff. I mean, you're talking about these different quantum technologies and, these particle accelerators, things of that nature. The quantum computer, that's a popular one. They're using that, I think, mostly for the encoding capabilities of it at this point, and the encryption. So, there's a lot of different encryption type firms, security firms that are using these quantum computers now in order to make sure that everything's either safely encrypted, or they could pretty much de-encrypt anything that they want. The intelligence community is using it, I'm sure, for that too. So pretty much any of your data, it's not really safe at this point, guys. They could look at whatever they want that you have, no matter how much encryption you put on it. These machines are capable of just breaking the encryption of that. So it's one of those things that this is used basically for information. Okay. That's the big key right now in the 21st century. Information is the currency of the 21st century. So that's what they're doing. It's big data. We're in the age of big data. So all of these things are basically used to collect data. And they're doing so at an astronomical level right now. Like, it's unbelievable the amount of data that's out there on the internet. So and it's not just the internet. They collect your data in all kinds of ways you're not aware of. But even if you're not even, like, say, online, they still have a data file on you. So
yes, they do.
Yep. Yeah, they're tracking everybody in real time, all the time. So they know what you're doing. They know you and I are here live streaming right now, Jason. They're probably watching, laughing at us right now. So
coffee's good today.
Hey there, intelligence community. How you doing?
I hope you learned something.
Yeah, so I think some of them know, some of them probably don't. But, some of them probably think we're kooks, but that's okay. I'm used to that. I don't mind being the kook in the room, so it's something that you kind of get used to after a while when, you start to see through the nonsense all the time. So it's one of those things where, it's okay. I don't mind being called the conspiracy nut or whatever if they want to throw those kind of monikers on me.
Oh, let's talk about that in a moment. I actually forgot to mention something really important about the cameras. I also had trouble with the tripods. I saw somebody mentioning that in the chat room. You have to get a decent tripod, a certain kind of tripod, to make those cameras work well, and I really have been meaning to say this for a while now. I have these great Sirui if that's how you pronounce it, for tripods for my Black Magic cameras, and those are small and they're fantastic. They're for travel and all that. Those were great for that. Did not work for a diddly on my P1000 with that giant lens on the front. So what I ended up getting was a Cayer, Cayer is the brand. I got this on Amazon, and the model number is BV. That's boy Victor. 30L as in Larry, and it's a 72-inch professional heavy-duty twin-tube tripod with a K3 fluid head. That is what I'm using, and it's only $140. That is what I recommend for the cheap option. Now, if you have the money or you have other photograph equipment, by all means, use the heaviest duty one you got. But this is the least expensive one I found after doing a bunch of homework that works really, really well for these kinds of cameras. But sorry, Wayne, wanted to get that in there since I try to be helpful to our community as I can.
Okay.
But let's talk about the conspiracy thing for a second. Obviously, most folks know that you've had vaccine-damaged children damage as a result of vaccines, and that's kind of what turned you into a crazy tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy nut job. So,
oh yeah,
how
I'm
does
all
your
over the
family
place,
relate to
man.
that?
I gotta say, I'm very proud of my wife. We were watching the morning news the other day, and she's sitting there, and they were doing the whole. This is when the whole thing with the Iran nonsense was going on after
the big boom.
After Trump ordered that airstrike that killed that general or whatever.
Yeah.
So they have we're watching the morning news. I think it was ABC. It's really doesn't matter which channel it is or anything, but they had their reporter there, and she's talking about how the Iranians are demanding revenge and stuff for this, and that they're talking about they're going to kill Americans and this and that. And then she shows a video of her in the streets talking to some of the Iranian citizens that are yes, we want revenge. They have the translator people coming on, and my wife is sitting there, and she says, wait a minute, that reporter's American. Why are they, first of all, allowing her there and not killing her? It was a proud moment.
Because green screens don't attack you.
So, but yeah, it's one of those things where, the logic kind of starts to hit people in the face after a while, after they hear you talking about this stuff so much. And, that's the thing. I don't mind. People call me the conspiracy nut or whatever. Guess who's the first guy they go to talk to when they see something like that happening on the TV?
Yep.
What's your take on this? I got people asking me stuff all the time about all this different stuff. Just, and they seem open-minded about it. It's not like they're coming to you mocking you about it or anything. That may have been the case in the past, but now they're really starting to listen because they're seeing through the BS. I mean, I could, just tell you, just that moment that my wife said to me, that, hold on a second, that, this doesn't even make sense because she's an American. Why are they not up in arms that she's there, first of all, or even like killing her if they're vowing revenge and they're going to kill Americans or whatever? So she's seeing through the news media. She knows it's all nonsense. So, that's something that's kind of rubbed off now. But anyway, that's neither here or there. But there is this stigma attached to those of us who
speak out,
or what you might call a truth seeker or whatever, or somebody that just sees through the nonsense and calls it out for what it is. People are starting to wake up right and left. And even though the stigma is attached to it, they're starting to wonder, hey, is there really something to this? Like, because our numbers are growing, and that's the thing. People are, like I said, waking up right and left, and they may not all be at the same level or anything of understanding of a lot of this stuff, but most of them do notice right away something's not right here and know they're being lied to, and will actually acknowledge they're being lied to about it. They may not know much other than that, but that's the first step, is realizing you're being lied to. And then once you figure out the scale that you're being lied to on, it's astounding after a while.
That's
your mind
for sure.
really begins to open up. Yeah, I mean, when you're lied to from the top to bottom about everything you've ever been taught, once you realize that, you really begin to question things and look at things from a more logical and rational standpoint. You do a little bit of background investigation into things to see if something holds water or not. You don't just take something at face value anymore. So whatever you're presented, that's what you need to do. I mean, just look at it. Does it have the ring of truth in it? And after a while, you could begin to actually discern this stuff. And discernment's an important thing. And we've talked about that before. And that's the thing. I mean, after a while, you gain some discernment of what's going on around you. And, once you realize that the news media is put there to lie to you, that's their job. And once you realize that, not to take anything they tell you at face value. Do your own investigation. And this whole thing going on with Iran right now is a perfect example. They're pushing the fear porn on that Iran thing all over the place. And it's ridiculous. And they're just doubling down. And now, you don't hear a thing about impeachment anymore, do you?
Well, I knew that was going to happen. I was waiting for something, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I wasn't. I knew rolling into 2020, this is going to be a big year for a lot of different activity, just because of the numerical significance of it all, and all the things that are going on this year. It's an election year, it's an Olympics year, all of that stuff, and it's 2020. It's the year of perfect vision. There's a 2 and a 2. There's a 22 tied in it. That's the number of the master builder. So just looking at it from the numerical standpoint, I knew going into this year we were going to have some big things happen. I just wasn't expecting it so quickly, per se.
Right.
Like right after the first of the year, we have all this crap going on now. So it's just, don't buy into the fear porn, guys. It's like, honestly, that's what they want. And this is how they empower these things that they do, these events and stuff. This is how they empower it, is through your fear. So the more fear and stuff that you have, and agitation to this stuff that you see on the news, the more it kind of empowers what the results they're looking for with it. So yeah, they want to go warmongering maybe. So they'll use your fear and your general lack of knowledge about the whole thing to feed into that. So it's one of those things where your thoughts kind of create the reality. So don't buy into the fear, and don't let the fear really tear down your logical thinking mind, your rational adult human mind about this. Because when it comes down to it, think about it from, okay, let's look at it from the perspective of us as Americans. Say the roles were reversed, and one of our generals. And how many people here in the U.S. really idolize a general and have them as their national hero? Like I don't even think most people could even name a general in any of our armed services, to be honest. But say one of our generals got killed by an Iranian drone strike, would we have people in Washington D.C.? Would the streets be lined with millions of people like they showed over in Tehran? Out there yelling, death to America or whatever? Would we really have people out there in the streets saying death to Iran? No, I don't think we would. I mean, most people probably wouldn't even be aware that it even happened unless they watched it on their news channel. But
well, here's the thing, Wayne.
I'd say by and large, that's kind of a staged thing. So, that's not something that I would think would happen in a rational society. Like, these people are all going to take the day off of work or whatever, or school or whatever they have going on in their lives, to go stand out in the streets with a sign to celebrate this heroic general that died in this strike, and call for revenge against the people that did it. Like, I don't see it. I'm sorry. I just don't think it's a rational way of thinking. So you could kind of tell it's a staged event when you look at that. So it's something people need to be aware of, that you're being lied to by the news, and that's their job.
Well, here, if you want another of Morty's mind blowers, this whole Middle East thing has been going on longer than Vietnam did. So how about them apples? By the way, Val L., thank you for the $2 super chat. Just said, whoa. I'm not sure what we were talking about then. My apologies. There's a delay between what we're saying and what goes out over the live stream. So if you have a question or anything, Val, by all means, hit us up here. I'd be happy to answer it for you. But thank you for the super chat. But yeah, we've heard me say this numerous times on Croachable 7 Radio, that the last declared war was World War II. After that, these are whatever they want to call them, police actions or
Conflict.
situations. Yeah, they're not wars. They're not anything. And probably because if you declare an official war, well, first of all, everyone's got to agree on that, all the governing bodies, which is not as easy as getting just troops sent somewhere to spank down whatever it is they want to do, or bring someone some freedom and capture some oil and keep poppy fields flowing. And I'm sorry, what am I talking about? But anyway, America.
Yeah.
Which at heart I do love. Don't get me wrong. Don't think I don't. Let's move along with your book, though, Wayne. So we're up to quantum computers and quantum system states. Now, this is one of the ones I've been wanting to talk about with you because this book is now going on 3 years old, and technology has moved along, my friend. So where are we at with things compared to when you were initially doing the research for this book?
In the quantum computing field, we've gone from the standard qubit, which would be the equivalent of a bit, but it's a quantum bit, whereas your standard computer operates on bits, and these could either represent as a 0 or a 1, whereas a qubit in a quantum computer can be both a 0 and a 1 simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And this equates to faster computing speeds and more capabilities. Well, they've advanced these quantum states in the quantum computers. Not only can they do the standard qubit, but they can also do, I forget what the exact term is for it, but they could actually have something that has 3 separate states. That could be all 3 states at once now, too. So it could be a 0, 1, or a 2. And I think I just read recently that they've been able to actually achieve a 4th state with it now, too.
Whoa.
So they have all of these quantum bits. I forget the name of it. It's a qubit, I think is what it's called. Yeah, that sounds right. Qubit. Look up the term qubit. So this could represent as a 0, a 1, or a 2, or even a 3 now, or all 4, any combination of the 4 of them. So this really escalates the computational power of these devices into astronomical realms when you look at it that way. So as a computational tool, quantum computers in the very near future are going to be unparalleled for a lot of different tasks. They could achieve things that even your standard, what they call supercomputers, aren't able to achieve. They could run calculations and stuff that they can't. And they use very specific algorithms to do this. One in particular is they use something called Monte Carlo algorithm to actually do some calculations and figure things out. Now, a quantum computer works is it'll determine what would be the best outcome based upon large data sets. So when they use these algorithms, they're able to arrive at the best answer out of lots of different plausible answers, whereas your standard computer would just try to calculate it out. But it basically gives like a really, really good guesstimate of what would be the best answer to the problem that it's given. And this is basically how it works. It's an algorithm machine, pretty much. It could run complicated algorithms that a standard computer can't. So that's what they use. It's a method called combinatorial optimization. That's what these quantum computers do to achieve the answers that they're looking for with them. So they have different capabilities from a standard computer or even a standard supercomputer. So when you look at it that way, if you could tie, say, a standard supercomputer to a quantum computer, the computing power would be just unbelievable. And that's how they could arrive at 99% accuracy in future predictions and things like that. It's all a numbers game, and it has to do with game theory. And a lot of these algorithms utilize game theory and come directly from game theory. That's what they use to achieve these results with these things. So that is an advancement that has taken place within the quantum computing field since I've written this book. And it's really not that old of a book. I put it out late 2017 is when it came out. So, in that time, we've advanced quite far with a lot of these different devices and different technologies. And that's a perfect example. It's not just a qubit anymore. Now they have qubits to work with these quantum computers. So that's going to be interesting to see what kinds of things that they could do with it now.
Well, the quantum computing thing, I know a lot of people like to doubt that these actually exist and things like that. Do we have any reasonable proof that quantum computers exist? They work as, or at least somewhat, like they're said to, things like that. Where is your research taking you with quantum computers? Because I think that's a really important topic. I also think it's a bit of a scary topic because quantum computers can do crap that, even though I've got a $5,000 iMac Pro sitting in front of me, it makes it look like it's an abacus.
Right. Well, they're definitely a device that does exist. They do exist. I mean, there's no doubt about that. They're extremely expensive, so your standard person doesn't have access to them. I think the D-Wave runs about $10 to $20 million.
Is that all?
For, yeah, that's all. Just for one of their D-Wave computers. So, not something your average run-of-the-mill computer geek is going to have sitting around the house, because where would you put this?
Man, you should see my video card.
Yeah. I mean, if you got the space to put this giant 10-foot black cube that looks like the altar to an alien god, then by all means, go ahead and buy that thing for you. So, that's one of those things. But it's not something that everybody has access to. So, because they're really expensive, their performance capabilities are very limited with the different requirements that they have to them. Like they have to have a cooling mechanism in them that's called a pulse tube dilution refrigerator, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly as to what it's called. This keeps the ambient temperature around the processor around what they call absolute zero. So this is very extremely cold. You have to have this in order for quantum states to take place. So as far as it being an actual thing, yeah, it's an actual thing. Does it operate how they say? I don't think it does, because they're not really sure how it operates, to be honest. And they even tell you that they're not sure exactly how it works, but they do describe some different quantum system states in certain ways. Now, is this an actual, real good description of what's going on? I don't think so. Once again, I think it's one of those things that's totally misdescribed to us. Once again, this ties back to the whole philosophy of atomism. So they're trying to equate different properties of these technologies back to the whole atomistic viewpoint, whereas they try to relate everything back to a particle, whereas there might not necessarily be evidence that there's some type of a particle that exists. In fact, they do that a lot with quantum physics, is they'll make a prediction that there should be this type of particle, and then lo and behold, a couple years later, they claim they found this particle. And the perfect example of that is that what do they call the God particle? You remember that whole thing with that? They claim they found that.
Yep.
Yeah. So and that's, guess what? That's not the smallest particle now. Now they found other things that go along with it. So what was that one called? The name's escaping me for the moment. What was the official name for it? But it was called the God particle.
Yeah, what was that called? It was a something on, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's always something on of some sort. So, but
that's an easy way to find that out, because we like to be informative here.
Yeah, but that's beside the point. But I think quantum physics is misdescribed, and there's different things that happen in physics.
Higgs boson.
That's what it is, the Higgs boson. I couldn't think of it off the top of my head for some reason. Too much information sometimes. But anyway, that's beside the point, because even the things they describe, they break down to some degree or another in different things they describe. Like a perfect example of that is the whole idea of this whole atomism thing, where everything's a particle, breaks down in something called an Bose-Einstein condensate, whereas these things become both particles and wave functions at the same time in this thing. And it's one of those things where even the concept that they give you, the description they give you, breaks down in their own terms that they use. So they have to come up with new concepts and terms for this to describe what exactly is happening. And you see this all the time. It's the same thing with the whole dark matter dilemma. So
that made up variable because they put a name to.
Yeah, we gave it a new name, but yeah, Einstein called that the cosmological constant.
Yep.
Now they call it dark matter because it doesn't work.
Hang on, Wayne. Let's
in there mathematically.
Let's talk about what that is. All that is a variable that they can't make work in their equations the way they want it to. So they give it a name. They just make something up and say, well, this is the cosmological constant. This is a constant in the universe that affects things in this way so that my theory will work mathematically. Well, they don't like that one anymore. Yeah. That one's out of favor. Let's come up with a new one. Now it's dark matter. These things aren't real. These things aren't real.
Yep. It's even like, I'm sorry, you can't prove to me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that even a black hole exists. Like, it's one of those things where...
I saw the picture. It's real.
The math... Yeah, the math doesn't... You saw the picture, that composite, that artist rendition, that artist interpretation of what was it, like 6 terabytes of data or something ridiculous like that?
From all over the world.
Come on. From all over the world, yeah. And it looks like a cat's eye. Okay. Where do you go from there with that? I mean, yeah, it's artistic interpretation on all of that stuff. So it just boggles the mind. You can't mathematically prove it, so you come up with a variable to put in there so that the math works with the theory that you're putting out. And that's what that is. That's what dark matter is. It's just the new cosmological constant so that they could just keep their model that they have now that doesn't work. So, and they like these models that don't work for some reason. I don't know. I don't understand. Yeah, it doesn't work in reality, but let's come up with some creative math and do some mental gymnastics to make it work.
And that's just it. That's it. And they make stuff so that the common person can't understand it. That you got to have 6 blackboards full of numbers, and sometimes I think that the universe probably works a lot simpler than that. And I will tell you what I think it is. I think it's all frequency and different states thereof, from the lowest state, which would be physical matter, up into the highest state, which would be whatever God truly is. I think it's all frequency and how much the waveforms are up, down, your peaks and troughs. The higher you go up, I think the higher state you become. And light, or somewhere thereabouts, that frequency is the limits of the physical universe. And once you get beyond that, you start transcending into whatever is beyond, which is why people say things like spiritual entities seem to be outside of time and things like that. And, well, that's why, because they're on a higher state. They can dip down to us, but we can't get ours high enough to reach them. That's my theory, and I think it's a pretty damned good one. What do you think, Wayne?
I think it's a good theory, too. Now, all we need is 6 black chalkboards so that we could write a whole bunch of math up there, and then we could call it science!
Science! All right. I can't believe we've only got 40 minutes left here. So particle accelerators is the next one. Let's talk about those, because I'm sure things have changed in the past several years with those as well.
Yeah, particle accelerators. Now they're saying they could build really, really small ones if they want to. That's something I just saw.
Yeah, I got one in my bathroom. Want to see
it? Yeah. So, but yeah, they have this Large Hadron Collider at CERN, and I guess the Chinese are building a bigger one than that, and they're supposed to be building one somewhere here in the United States that's even bigger yet at some point in the near future, even though they say they could build them on a smaller scale and still, get results from them. One of the big news stories lately that came out with these is they said they broke the speed of light in the Large Hadron Collider now. Gee, what a shocker, huh? It's,
How do you do that?
The speed of light, they were saying. Very carefully.
Very carefully. That's anyway, my answer.
Yeah, very carefully. But, yeah, they claim they broke the speed of light now in the particle accelerator. And a lot of the physicists have, used this whole speed of light idea as the absolute constant or barrier for the speed of things. But now they've proven you can go faster than light, supposedly. We'll see. I don't know if the speed of light, the way it's described to us, is an actual thing or not. It's one of those things where it's not really a constant when you look at it. And that's the thing. They describe the speed of light as being a constant, but it has been shown to be changed. And all you have to do in order to see the speed of light change is send it through a jar full of water and watch this how the speed changes
Right.
with it. And that'll change the speed of it. So it's not really something that's a constant. There's experiments and stuff you could do, like just like that one, that will show that it's not a constant. So when you look at it that way, it's something that's mutable. Okay, it's not this immutable absolute barrier to speed that there is, like the way they described it. And now they've proven that in their big 17-mile around particle accelerator that they have to do science in order to just justify their existence. So we'll count some particles and we'll come up with new names for it in our particle zoo. And no word of lie, that's what they call it.
Yep.
The particle zoo,
Yep,
because there's always some kind of a new on to add on there. And that's an interesting name that they give it. They put on the end of it. Is there anything esoteric about the word on, Jason?
On. The city of On. In ancient Sumeria, am I remembering correctly?
Well, On, that's also another name for Ra. So,
No, but it was
Ray.
a city. It was the city of light.
Yeah, well, there you go. Ray, Ra,
Right.
On, Jabal.
Ray, where have we heard that recently?
That's,
Ray,
that's,
Ray.
By the way, that's a secret code word in Masonry, guys. Jabalan. But that's all beside the point. But there's very esoteric encoding. They put the word on the end of all these particles to kind of elicit power to the different thing. And they come up with some really clever ones too, like the gluon. That this is the particle that holds all the other particles together. It's the glue.
Well, that makes sense.
That's a
good word
it's
for
the
it.
Gluon.
Good name for it.
So yeah. They're really clever in their naming of these things, aren't they? But this is their particle zoo. But this is the kind of stuff that they do and they put out publicly. But what could we say about CERN? A lot of really weird occult things go on there, don't they, Jason?
Yes. By the way, before I forget, Satoshi Bear asked, what is the moon? That's something we want to figure out, and that's why we're teaming up with people like Dave Marsh, why Crow's going to get back to work. I'm going to try and do some work towards that. We don't honestly know. There's lots of inconsistencies, like I always say, with so much of this stuff, and we are going to try and figure out more and more what it may actually be. But there are a lot of strange things about the moon that make us think that it might not just be a great big rock in the sky. By the way, Satoshi Bear, I would love to see more bears come here. I don't know what I can do to get you guys' attention, but doing a new live stream every week and we try to cover information that I know Owen is really into, I would love to see more of you guys get here. Because we only have 136 people right now looking at my counter. That's great, but not a lot. And only a couple thousand people every week see them. So we just want to build this thing more and more. So if anybody has any ideas, I'm open to them. I would love to get this thing really, really big.
Yeah, and we could get more bears here. I have a simple way to do that. Bears, I live out in the sticks in the middle of nowhere. So I could tell you one thing. The bears out here, they absolutely love my friggin' garbage can. So I could put my garbage can back here if that would attract some bears here.
Oh, I think we could do better than that. I generally like the bears.
Yeah.
But
Me
seriously,
too,
yeah,
but-
I would like to.
yeah.
I don't know if Owen would even want to come on with us. Maybe that's an idea that'll get a lot of bears over here. But I like the fact that Owen has grown so much very quickly in months, and that he's helping in case anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, people who are fans of Owen Benjamin call themselves Bears, which is, his nickname or whatever he considers it is Big Bear, which is cool. So they've got their own little thing going on. And I would like to see them get more information, because Owen is really good at throwing a bunch of stuff out there, and a lot of where he's getting it from is Crow 777 Radio and the work that Wayne and I do as well. So we'd love to have more of you guys here, so to help you guys along as well.
Yeah, that would definitely be a cool thing. So, any way we could get, if you know anybody who's interested in this kind of stuff, guys, just spread the word that we're on the air here. So, it's been, kind of steadily growing here the past few weeks. So, we're plugging away, trying to reach some bigger audiences and stuff like that. So, it's good because we need to get this information out there. That's what it's all about in the end of it all, is getting the information out there for people to consider. And if they take value from it and could use it to, make things better for themselves, great. And if they think it's total nonsense or whatever, no harm done. At least they're coming here, they're getting entertained, right? So I would
we do make
encourage
jokes.
people, do your own research. I mean, that's the thing. Don't believe anything I have to say or anything Jason has to say. Go look for yourself. You might be shocked at what you find.
That's for sure.
Sometimes we wind up softballing things just to make it more palatable to people. And the things that we do find are a lot more shocking than what we say openly.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that a lot of things, Crow included in this, that we talk about are actually a lot more serious than we let on because, as Crow would say, we don't want to blow people's minds. Like, people's heads will blow off. We don't want to do that. We're trying to give you enough of what we've discovered to understand and take it further. Like, everyone, I always highly recommend do your own homework. Some Bill Cooper always used to say, too, don't believe what I say. Go and do your own homework. Totally agree, Bill.
Absolutely, and I think that's an important thing that all has to do with people's personal growth too, and their own path, and that's an important thing when you get into the study of things like alchemy. It's a personal path. No two people come about this information or these different ideas by taking the same path. It's an individual journey, and it's an individual process, and everybody takes different value from different things. But I would recommend listen to what everybody has to say, learn to use discernment, and do your own homework, and be able to find things that support your position on things, or if there's something somebody's saying, make sure, look and see what there is out there that supports that position before you just out and out believe something. I mean, I'm not a proponent of just randomly taking everything at face value. That's what the TV and what the media and all of that stuff wants you to do, is just take everything they feed you at face value and just run with it like that and believe what they tell you. I don't want people to do that. I want you to question things. I want you to see if you can poke holes in these ideas and stuff like that. So if you could find value in stuff like that, that's great. So, that way you can kind of discern a little better for yourself what's true, what's not true, what seems to be, to hold true in your experience, that kind of thing. And it's all an individual kind of a journey, and it's an individual experience. So that's kind of the path that needs to happen for people. It's a personal journey that each of us goes on, and discovering these things. So.
By the way, I see people talking about Owen. I have no idea if he's some kind of shill or not. I don't think he is. And I give everybody a fair shake and be cool to everyone until I have a reason not to. And Owen Benjamin has never been anything but cool and very respectful to me. I met him, when was that? November? Yeah, November. Really awesome to me. Extremely respectful. Had several really good conversations. I don't know where the negativity towards the guy is coming from, but I think he seems like a great dude, and he's just trying to do what we are all doing, and that's understand what the heck's going on. And he came a long way in a very short amount of time, and, probably blew his mind a little bit, understandably so. But that's my take on it. I like Owen until I have a reason not to.
Yeah, I don't see an issue with the guy. He seems genuine to me from what I've seen of him. I've watched a few of his videos and stuff now. He puts kind of a comedic take on things and stuff.
Well, that's because he's a comedian.
Yeah, right. I get that. You're kidding. Is that what it is? No. But at any rate, yeah, it's one of those things where everybody's journey is a little different, and he seems genuine from
David
what
Wilcock.
I can see. So.
Somebody just said David Wilcock. David Wilcock's a fraud. Him and his buddy Corey. They are frauds. They've been frauds since I heard them back with Art Bell. Good evening, this is Art Bell, and tonight on Coast to Coast we have David Wilcock, who says that he is the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. Bullshit. That guy is a fraud through and through. And why do I say that with such confidence and boisterousness in my voice? Because I've checked him out, and it is obvious. That's why. Anyway,
Jason, look at his hair.
his hair is great. He's got great hair.
He's got great hair. So,
And
I
a
mean,
big
that's got to account for
smile.
something.
Great big
Yeah,
smile. Anyway,
he's in good with the Sphere Being Alliance, so he's all good.
blue
And the
chicken
bluebird
people.
blue chicken people. Yes, it's all about the blue chicken people. So, but anyway, I digress.
All right, next we have nanoparticles. Let's talk about nanoparticles, Wayne.
Oh boy, that's probably
nanoparticles.
that's probably one of the biggest things going on right now that people are largely unaware of. There's nanoparticulates in everything. It's in our food. It's in our water. It's in the air we breathe. It's in the vaccines quite heavily. And I'm not just talking just regular nanoparticles or nanoparticulates. There's actual technologies in there. It's not just particles per se. There's technologies at work that are being used against us in ways that people can't even imagine.
Chemtrails.
What'd you say?
Chemtrails.
Yes, chemtrails is a big producer of these things, and you're breathing them in, and they're in every one of your bodies out there right now, whether you realize it or not, and whether you believe it or not. I don't expect anybody to believe that that's the case. Go look for yourself.
I'm a nihilist. I believe in nothing.
Yes, but yes, I would recommend people go look up nano.gov. Just look on there. I mean, that's an official government website that talks about all things nanotechnology.
.gov. Does that mean it's a government website?
Yes, it is.
Oh.
That's usually what that means. It's not .glove, it's .gov. So, but at any rate, that's one particular place you could look and find all kinds of different things about nanotechnologies and stuff like that. The Department of Defense and DARPA are very heavily involved with developing nano devices and things of that nature. One that's very provable that people could look up that they might find a little bit disturbing, but it's still kind of mild compared to what's really out there, is something called smart dust. I would recommend people look up smart dust. And there's also an admitted to thing that goes along with smart dust. It's kind of a take on smart dust, and it's called neural dust. And that's a real thing too. People could look up and see that's maybe just a little bit disturbing, but not as disturbing as the stuff that's really out there that I really don't want to go into too much detail about because it could take up a whole 2-hour show. But that's beside the point. If people are really interested in knowing a lot of what's going on with a lot of these nanoparticulates and nano devices, nano machines, nanobots, all of that stuff, I could highly recommend. It's available out there on Vimeo right now. You could watch my presentation from Shoot the Moon NYC, where I talk about that, where these different things are going on with this nanotechnology, and people might be a little shocked to hear about some of that. So it's something that I'll just put my toe in the water right here because we only have like 25 minutes or something left here. So we could say the nanotechnology it's a big part of the overall transhumanist agenda. It's a big part of things to come, and it's being used to manipulate you in all kinds of ways that you're unaware of right now. Things like a little something called optogenetics that people could look up. That's also a very provable thing that's going on. It talks about what this is, optogenetics, using different nano devices that could attach themselves to people's neurons. They could use blue light from, like, say, computer screens or television screens or anything of that sort to basically read your thoughts. And that's one of the things that people might not realize is really going on. Do you ever think about something and then, an hour or two later, you're scrolling through Facebook and there's an ad for it on there?
That never happens.
I mean, I'm just telling people, have you had that experience? You didn't say anything about it. You weren't talking about it. You thought about it. And then there's an ad for it on Facebook. That's optogenetics at work, folks. That's this nano neurotechnology. And That's another term you'll see. Nano neuro will be going around a lot. Nano neurotechnology. That's neurotechnology hard at work right now. And you could even look up. There's articles from last year where Facebook is talking about trying to develop technology that could read your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know. I'm not sugarcoating it or anything, but yeah, it's really something, and it's not science fiction. It's real stuff, and the state of it is way beyond that. If they're letting you see that now out in public view, then that's probably 30-year-old technology, and I can't emphasize that enough to people. So, it's something to think about. But yeah, we could move on from there. Nanotechnology, it's something that's being utilized on a grand scale right now that people are largely unaware of, but it's out there, I assure you.
And there's the big three, as we always like to say, the triumvirate of transhumanism, if you want to do any homework on them. That would be Ray Kurzweil, Elon Musk, and my favorite little personality, other than Uncle Elon, which is Zoltan Istvan. He's a very interesting fellow. If you don't know who he is, and we did a show on him a couple weeks ago, take a look at what he says and does, and I don't know. I like that guy. He's entertaining, to say the least.
Let's just say he's a bit charismatic. He comes off sounding a little out there sometimes with stuff.
He seems like he should have a Netflix science fiction show about him. That's what I think.
He's very knowledgeable, and boy, does he have a cartoon villain name or what? Zoltan. How do you go wrong with a name like that? Zoltan. Yeah,
it is cool. I like it. So we did computer-brain interfaces. So how about genetic engineering, epigenetics, and life extension technology?
Yeah, that's a big one right now.
Well, that's a big one, and we've only got 23 minutes left. So I know we're not going to get through all of this. We'll have to finish this another time.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Yeah, basically, when you're looking at the biology aspect of all of this, the genetic aspect, you're talking about technologies such as what's called CRISPR. And in the interim from when I wrote my book until now, there's been some advances in that. The CRISPR gene editing tool that they were using, it used to use something called a Cas9 protein in order to do the work, to snip out the portions of the DNA that they were looking to do in order to alter it. Basically, how this works is this uses this enzyme or this protein to snip out a part of a DNA sequence. And they could use a protein scaffold that they could put some different RNA in order to insert different information into the DNA strand. So they could use this to alter DNA, but one of the advances they made is they used to use this Cas9 protein to do this, okay? But they discovered that this a newer protein called a Cas10 protein seems to work a little bit better. So they've been able to kind of tweak this tool so that they could use this different protein now to do that. I don't know much about the Cas10 protein so much now, but from what I could see, I mean, this is a tool they could use to alter the genetics and things, and they do it pretty easily. I mean, they actually you could buy CRISPR kits and stuff for just public use and consumption, and you can do experiments on yourself. You could inject yourself with stuff that'll potentially change your DNA around. So I mean, there's a lot of potential for abuse with this stuff. So it's something that I think there needs to be some tighter restrictions on, because it's kind of scary that this stuff's just available for public consumption out there. Another thing that they have done with this technology, this CRISPR tool, is they've created something called a gene drive. So what this does is this will actually alter the genes of a person or a creature. In this case, they've used it in mosquitoes a lot. Okay, so they could change these genetics in mosquitoes so that it passes on through their germline to the next generation. So not only are they changing the individual genetic traits of the individual mosquito, but they're making these so that they pass on into the whole entire species, like to the next generation that this mosquito would breed with or whatever. So that's what they're doing with this. And I guess they were saying they were doing it to trying to remember. I think this had to do with the whole microcephaly thing that was going on. Do you remember that, the Zika virus and all that?
Yeah.
They were trying to engineer the mosquitoes so that they weren't spreading this around or something along those lines, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, something
but
like that.
what they're talking about now is actually engineering these mosquitoes so that when they bite you, they vaccinate you. And I kid you not.
Isn't that great?
So, yeah, that's nice, isn't it? So, yeah, they're trying to genetically engineer these mosquitoes to do that so that they can vaccinate you with them. So that way, if you're one of those crazy anti-vaxxers like me, you'll be getting your vaccination anyway. So, thanks. But no thanks. But that's beside the point. But, but that's kind of some of the things that they've been working on with these type of technologies. And the science of epigenetics is still kind of in its infancy right now, but what this studies people's genetic predisposition towards things. It's not something that's necessarily definitely inherited genetically, but there's the potential there for something to manifest genetically, and a lot of this is caused by environmental triggers. So that's what epigenetics studies, is this kind of thing. So this is kind of like what you would call meta information passed on through your DNA. So it's one of those things where it's not something that's directly related to the genetic, but it can be traced through family lines to some degree or another, and it kind of makes you predisposed towards certain things. I think a lot of this plays heavily into the whole vaccine autism link as well. I think a lot of people have certain genetic factors that are more of an epigenetic type factor that gives them a higher susceptibility rate to developing autism from the vaccines. And, this is something that I think needs to be studied more, but unfortunately, the vaccine manufacturers aren't doing that, nor do they intend to do that, because they'll tell you the science is settled. The vaccines don't cause autism. So, that's something that I take umbrage with too, because I've torn apart a lot of vaccine studies. So, yeah, but that's neither here or there. So, we should probably move on to the next topic here.
I don't know what OP means, but I'm seeing people say that in the chat. Do you know what that's supposed to stand for? Wayne is OP. I don't know what that means.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
Ocean Pacific? It was a line of clothes back in the 1980s. Do you remember that, Jason?
Yeah, I do. When I was wearing my members only jacket.
Oh, back in the day, Yeah, we're showing our age. We're old. But that's beside the point.
We have next geoengineering, chemtrails, and GMOs, or genetically modified organisms.
Yeah, all these things kind of cross over with one another. The geoengineering that's going on, they've kind of doubled down. Since I wrote the book, they've really doubled down on this, and this has become, publicly accepted knowledge that these geoengineering programs are something that they're planning on doing, and they have started to do. They use terms like solar radiation management. What's another popular one that they use for that, other than the geoengineering, solar radiation management?
On point.
There's a couple other
that makes
terms
sense.
they use.
Okay. You're on
okay.
point.
Yeah.
Wayne is on point. There you go. Pew!
I'm on point. Sometimes I go off point. I go off point a lot. I go off on tangents and stuff. That's just kind of how my brain works. So, I'll start thinking about stuff, and I'm easily distracted too at times. Ooh, shiny. But it's just one of those things. But anyway, geoengineering programs. This is something that's being readily admitted to.
Big time now.
It's well known. Oh yeah, it's been documented that they're spraying us with aluminum, strontium, barium, various other things like that. A lot of things have been coming forward with it. There's different patents and stuff you could look up. They're pushing the whole climate change agenda with this, and they're claiming this is their solution to climate change, when in reality that this is actually what's causing climate change. But they're introducing it as the solution, and I think there's different levels of deception going on with this whole chemtrail thing. I think it's one of those multifaceted platforms, once again, that they use for different reasons. And one of the main reasons is they're trying to block out our sun. Uh, and I think there's some more esoteric ideas that play along with that as well as to why they're blocking out the sun. Now, the story they gave you on the surface of it all is they're trying to block out the sun because of runaway global warming, so it's to cool the temperature of the planet. So what they do is they're affecting the albedo of clouds, which is the reflectivity of clouds, so that the clouds will reflect the sunlight back up out of the atmosphere, so that it'll cool the global temperature. Supposedly, this is what they claim and what they say. So that's what their reasoning is on the surface. But I think there's more esoteric things involved with it. There's different reasons they're blocking out the sun, and the sun is our connection to life. So it's kind of blocking life energy from hitting the earth, in my viewpoint. So if you take away the life energy, you have a population of sick people. And is that not what's going on by and large in society today?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not good. Definitely not good. Very much concerning.
Yeah, it's very concerning. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, just look now. I mean, I'm sitting here hacking and coughing all the time, constantly here.
Yeah.
Everybody I know is fighting some kind of a cold or virus or something right now.
Lots of new allergies. That's the one thing we see a lot of.
Allergies.
Lots of allergies. Yeah.
Right, and this has to do with a lot of different things. I think right now, I've noticed the past couple of years, I've taken notice, like this time of year in particular, when you're going from November, like right on through until I would say early March, everybody's sick. Now, that's kind of always been, like a stereotypical thing in the wintertime. People do tend to get sick more in the wintertime, but it's really escalated the past couple of years, I've noticed. And I think this largely relates directly to flu shots. People are going out and getting their flu shots, and then they get sick, and then they pass it on and get everybody else sick too. So it's like everywhere you go, everybody's got this. And then once again, I think this also ties back to the things they're spraying in the sky too, because there's been different kinds of bacteria and viruses and human blood cells and things like that found in the chemtrail spraying. So I mean, we're getting hit from a lot of different angles with this stuff. So it's no wonder people are like sick with this stuff, with respiratory illnesses and things like that right now. I think a lot of it plays along with this. There's different vectors we're getting hit at with this, and the chemtrail spraying is one of those. So that's these geoengineering programs at work. I think the reasons that they give are not really the truth about why they're doing it, or what they're doing exactly, or what they're even spraying. I think it's a cover. It's a big operation that's been going on. From some of the research I've done, it seems to me that a lot of the monies that go to the quote-unquote secret space program are heavily involved in these geoengineering programs. Like a lot of the black budget monies that go, out there into the black projects world wind up in these geoengineering programs. So it's an interesting thing that we need to keep an eye on. And we're not getting any straight answers from anybody in the know about it. So it's one of those things that could be very telling in the next couple of years.
What topic here in the chat room, I'm not sure which ones you're referring to. If it's Mandela effect, there's something going on. But it's really, really difficult to nail it all down. And once you start tearing into it, you're going to drive a lot of people nuts, too, because everyone's got a lot of different opinions on it, and it's very, very hard to tell anybody what their personal memories are. Now, the one thing I can tell you that Wayne and I both agree on, out of all of the stuff that is Mandela effect related, the one that I even got Crow on, even though he doesn't want to say what's really behind it, is the Moonraker clip. And I'd say this all the time. there's something to that. I distinctly remember, Wayne, I know you distinctly remember, and Crow even remembers, and a lot of people I've asked remember. In Moonraker from 1978 or 79, whatever year that came out, the girl had braces in the Jaws scene at the end. And that's just that. Now, if that's some kind of really clever psyop that was arranged, or there's something else to it, there's absolutely no way to prove that we know of. And we're open to look at stuff, but the problem is, where do you go to look at something like that? I just don't know.
Right, and that's a lot of the thing with the Mandela effect too. Is it's one of those things where it's largely unprovable. I mean, there's no way to prove that this has changed. And I could tell you, I've had some personal experiences with the Mandela effect that really blown my mind. And it's just one of those things where you don't know what to accept as to being the reasoning behind it. There's a lot of people who have a lot of different theories about it. I would say at this point, looking back now and examining things more closely as I have, I would say this is akin to the barn wall from Animal Farm, like Crow alludes to a lot. That's what this is. How it's being done, that's another story. I have no idea. I could speculate all day long. Is it something like, say, maybe some kind of a mass psyop or mind control type thing? I think that's probably a likely scenario because we can see that they do have technologies and stuff that are able to alter memories. So that's a possibility. It's one of those things. It's very hard to nail down what exactly is the cause of it. It is a real thing going on, though. Whether it's actually making real physical changes in our world or not, though, that's open for interpretation and debate because it could just be something playing around with your memory or your mind. So,
yeah,
it's
hard to say, man. It really
it's one of those things that it is. It's one of those things that's largely unprovable, and it's a fascinating topic. And I've looked at a lot of these. If anybody is really interested in the Mandela, I can't recommend enough a guy named Brian Stadley. He's on top of it with the Mandela and stuff. He's done a lot of looking at it and research into it.
He was here last week in our chat room.
Yeah, he does frequent the chat room and stuff here. He does, keep up with us and stuff. So he's a good guy, and he knows his stuff about Mandela for sure. So
now I've disproved some of them, by the way.
Recommend checking it out.
Before I forget to mention this, I've looked at some of them, and some of them I've disproven. Like there was a Doors song that there's a channel named Moneybag73, if I remember correctly, who's really really good at going at this stuff, but not all of them are Mandelas. Like I found the reason why there was a Doors song that had different lyrics, and it was because the original was one version, and then when they did a 90s release, it was a different version, and people were just kind of mixing them up. And I found both versions exist on different releases, and it was something as simple as that. Now, that does not explain something as crazy as the Moonraker clip, so obviously there's still something to this. Now, we're running out of time really quick, and somebody asked an important question, or something I think is important. In the chat room, Alice Mint asked, how do we feel about Walmart FEMA camps in regards to a possible World War III? Now, I'll tell you a story.
Go ahead.
Crow hit me with this a few months ago. He doesn't go to Walmarts at any, like ever really, and he happened to go to one and called me while he was there saying to me about what he thought about that. And it's the same thing I always thought. Those things could be ready-made. What would you call them? I hate to call them FEMA camps, but could they be used as a detainment center easily with the way it's structured and how easily things could be moved around on the inside and all that? Yes. Walmart is in bed with the government. That's an easy one to prove. So there seems to be something about it. And that's really all I can tell you. If they wanted to turn that into some kind of detainment camp, yes, it could be so. And I don't think you're going to disagree with that one, right, Wayne?
No, it's definitely possible. I mean, any type of retail structure like that, the possibility does exist. It could be converted on the fly pretty quickly. I don't think it would take much, as largely the interior of those type stores is kind of it's just big and open, and it's very mutable, so they can do whatever they need with it. So I mean, it's possible it could be done, and probably could be done relatively quickly if they wanted to change it over. But I don't know if labeling it a FEMA camp per se would be an accurate assessment of that.
Well, Crow noticed what I noticed, why he called me to say this. He's like, wow, I could see so many ways this could easily be used very quickly in a negative scenario like that. And I was like, yeah, man, I know you don't normally go to these places, but sometimes I do out of necessity, because there really isn't a lot of options sometimes. There aren't a lot of options sometimes. But I don't know. That's it. We've only got 5 minutes left, Wayne. What else would you like to cover that you feel is important? And we could always pick up this another time, because there are quite a few topics. Let me see. Oh yeah, there's a lot of topics left in here, so we can do that later at another live stream. But what do you want to? How do you want to tie this up for today? First of all, what we've been talking about is this Wayne's book, The Alchemical Tech Revolution, and he did a lot of work on this. This was very well researched, and I'm very happy that Wayne put this out. And as we've been discussing through this whole live stream, that there is a lot of information coming out all the time. This is what we were doing, was basically, let's go through and do an update on what you put out from several years ago. But Wayne, what would you like to throw out in these last few moments that we have?
I think it's important to really touch on the spiritual aspect of a lot of these things, because what we're building towards right now is this whole transhumanist agenda, and it doesn't take into account or have any regard for spiritual things. And that's a major concern, because that kind of leans towards more of a Luciferian type mindset, as far as that goes, or a secular human mindset. So it's disregarding a lot of spiritual aspects of things, and I think it's a dangerous path to go down, because you're looking at trying to turn just our whole world upside down. Pretty much, it's an attempt to invert our natural world. It's an inversion of nature and how it works, and it's trying to eliminate the spiritual component of things and bind everything into this physical, material world. And that's a dangerous thing when you're looking at it. So my take on it is, with the real danger of transhumanism, is if you buy into this philosophy and you go the route of allowing the yourself to be merged with the machine per se, I think you're losing a bit of your essence, your spiritual spark, that divine spark that's put within us, and you're opening yourself up to the encroachment of different possible spiritual powers per se, and that's a dangerous thing, because I honestly believe that even if they do manage to accomplish the ability to transfer their quote unquote consciousness into a computer, I don't think that'll be them in essence. Like, that'll be the actual person. It'll be
data.
A replica. Yeah, it'll be a replica of that person, but does your spirit move along with that? I don't think it does. So this creates a scenario where, if you're connecting your physical body to these machines, and you think you're uploading your consciousness into the machine, and you're achieving this quote-unquote immortality, I think your spirit will move on, and it'll mostly be machine left. And this makes it for a very dangerous scenario, with the possibility, if you accept that there are other spiritual beings or extra-dimensional beings out there that are looking to get a foothold into our reality and our world, this is a gateway. It's turning the human body into a gateway for such a thing, and the whole tie-in with the transhumanist thing. And this once again, this kind of reflects back to the Nephilim of the Bible. This was a being that didn't really belong in our physical reality. And this is what a lot of Christian theologists and stuff claim is the reasoning for the flood, is because these beings were interbreeding with man, and these beings did not belong in this physical reality that we live in. So you're looking at a similar thing with the whole transhumanism thing going on. This is a hybrid being that doesn't belong here. Okay, so when you look at that and you come to the conclusion that nature always self-corrects, we're looking at the coming of another Tower of Babel type moment here, in my view. And I think that that's another thing that's important to look at is these spiritual ramifications of this. And I go into detail of this in my book in the later chapters. And that's, kind of a place that we didn't really touch on here too much tonight. So I kind of would like to, just let people think about that towards the end here. Look at things with a more spiritual lens and keep an eye on it that way.
All right, that's it. We are out of here. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to everyone in the chat room. Find Wayne's books at on Amazon.com. Also, join us tomorrow for the new episode of Crow 777 Radio, crow777radio.com. This week's episode is with James True by many requests, and it was a great chat. So I hope you enjoy that as well. Good night, Fringe FM, and take care, everyone. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Good night.